Some people say the deaf community is toxic. And honestly, if your only exposure to the community is on TikTok, then I don't blame you. It certainly seems that way, with all of the negativity and criticism that spreads like wildfire. But interestingly enough, when we look at the research that's been done on minority communities, groups who've experienced generational trauma, and those who've experienced language deprivation, we see fascinating patterns that emerge when these three collide. Today, I want to look at some of these patterns and some of this research so we can better understand each other and so that we can identify how we can improve and heal as a signing community. First, minority communities. The research is clear. Minority communities tend to respond to oppression, prejudice, and other harmful actions by having a strong identity with strong in group boundaries as to who is inside the community and who is outside the community. And these boundaries are so strong. Why? Self preservation and group protection. It's us versus them, it's our community. It's a way to protect and ensure survival as a minority group. And this is the case for most minority groups, not just deaf. But in the deaf community, this may look like having the label of real deaf, as in we are big D deaf, we are signing deaf, and everyone else, codas, hard of hearing, everyone else, you don't belong here. We're the community, we're the real community. And there may be constant social policing online and in the community to identify who isn't allowed, who doesn't belong. But again, I'm going to emphasize here that this pattern is not just found in the deaf community, not at all. This pattern is common amongst minority communities in general. Minorities tend to have strong in-group boundaries to identify who is in and who is out. That tendency is very common as a way to respond to the oppression coming at them, strong boundaries to protect. Also, the research is clear that when someone experiences oppression, trauma, stigma, discrimination, prejudice, over a lifetime, over many, many years, that causes stress that's chronic. And that, for the deaf community, may look like I feel like I have to fight for everything, for education services, for doctor appointments, accessibility, legal support, just so much that I have to fight for every day. And even when you may not need to fight in a specific circumstance, you still feel like you have to battle because of a lifetime of experiences. Another thing research shows is that minority communities tend to have an increased desire to be around people similar to themselves. It's called homophily. That is a common pattern among minorities. And that, for the deaf community, may look like really strong bonds between friends and the community being very close-knit, like a family. I'm going to go more in depth about this later when we discuss linguistic deprivation, but the deaf community is very much like a strong family. A note about research and terminology. Keep in mind that in this video, I am focusing on the ASL community here in the United States. And the research on minorities, etc., the research is largely from the United States as well. If you want to read more and delve into this research yourself, you can at the links I've provided in the description box below. The reason I'm focusing on the United States ASL community, well, it's unique in that this community is growing very rapidly. And also there are many strong opinions as to who belongs inside the community and who is not part of the community that many other countries simply just don't have. But here in the United States, there are very strong in-group boundaries. Today, I'm using two terms. First, the deaf community, meaning big D deaf, signing deaf that pass down their community values. Second, I'm using the term signing community, which is the deaf community, yes, but also includes codas as heritage propagators. It includes interpreters, ASL students, non-deaf people who sign for communication, people with disabilities like autism, psychogenic deafness, selective mutism. They all make up this signing community, which is a common term in other countries, one of which is Finland, whose community is called the signing community. So I'll be using both these terminologies for this video. Number 2, groups who experience generational trauma. The research is clear. When groups experience trauma, the result is often a heightened sensitivity to threat. Is he dangerous? Are you dangerous? Hypervigilance. Why? Well, years of hurt, years of pain culminate and is retained in body and mind. And that may look like if someone makes a general comment, whether positive or negative, the traumatized person may assume they're criticizing who they are. They assume they're criticizing them. Why? Because they grew up experiencing danger over years, which means they're hypersensitive to danger. They're worried, they're paranoid. And I don't mean clinical paranoia, just experience has taught them to worry. And that is the case for all groups who experience trauma. For the deaf community, this is uniquely potent. I'm going to give you a few stats to help you understand what I'm talking about. In the deaf community, 50% experience sexual abuse. 50%. And honestly, in my experience, in my observations, 50% is too low. The number is probably much higher. In my experience, most deaf in the community, most have been sexually abused. Why? Well, typically it's because of language deprivation, a reason that I'll go more into later. But let's just say if you can't communicate with family and you can't communicate with a trusted adult, and abusers gravitate to working at deaf schools, there are many reasons why abuse is prevalent. 75% of the deaf community experience abuse, varying types of abuse, such as physical, mental, emotional. So 50% sexual abuse, 75% general abuse. So if a group that experiences this level of trauma tends to be hypervigilant, always looking out for danger, well, that's why. It's obvious why in this case. The research also shows that groups that experience trauma tend to internalize the oppression that they're experiencing. They take in that oppression and start to believe it's true. The criticism they receive is internalized, and thus those negative thoughts are ingrained. For the deaf community, this looks like significant self-worth issues. Lots of deaf feeling less than their hearing peers. This is such a common problem. After so many years of being told, you are less, you are disabled, you can't do this, you can't do that, they internalize, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. Also, the research shows that groups that experience trauma tend to pass down that trauma. Intergenerational trauma transmission. So those traumas go from one generation to the next. That needed hypersensitivity is passed down. So in the deaf community, that may look different than other groups because typically deaf parents don't have deaf children. And typically 90% of deaf children have hearing parents, which means that it's not like the parents are passing down that trauma, but the community itself is passing it down because it's so close-knit, like a family. So that family, and really it is like a family, passes down that trauma. So it looks different than other groups, but the result is the same. Number 3, language deprivation. Like I mentioned earlier, 90% of deaf children grow up with hearing parents. 80% of those parents don't sign, or they only know a few signs, which means that they cannot communicate with their parents. Rarely, almost never. For example, this means having a mother and daughter conversation about sex and sensitive topics doesn't happen. A family dinner conversation where everyone is talking and laughing and socializing together doesn't happen. This means that there is no storytelling, reminiscing. Remember when this happened? That looking back on good memories. Nope. Planning for the future, imagining a career, having a family. What would it look like to have kids? No, there's no future planning together. It means that if someone abuses you at school, a deaf kid can't tell mom and dad what happened so that they could help. They just internalize the abuse and it erodes them from the inside. It means that if there's a group of hearing people all chatting and laughing together, crying together, socializing together, you're isolated. The research makes it obvious. People with language deprivation experience cognitive developmental delays, linguistic delays, social skills delays. Language deprivation can mean that emotional regulation is delayed or is a challenge. It means that relationships, how to navigate conflict, how to have in depth discussions, how to make up after a fight. I'm so sorry. All those skills are delayed. It can mean that picking up on social cues, for example, when to ask a question and when to hold that question until there's a better time, and recognizing when it's a good time to ask, that is delayed or a challenge. If you're language deprived, it can also mean that you're missing out on all of the conversations, debates, everyday chit chat that's happening around you. Did you know that? Did you hear what happened? You lack access to what's called incidental learning, where you would pick up world knowledge in a normal, natural way. You miss out on that typically until you arrive at a deaf school. If someone has a cochlear implant, still the ability to overhear information being distributed around you may still be significantly delayed. If someone goes to a mainstream school, not only are you missing out on incidental learning, but your only access to information is through an interpreter. So that limits understanding of how the world works, which is typically when we learn behavior norms. We learn how to behave. And this is true for all people with language deprivation, not just the deaf community, but it hits the deaf community extra hard. Growing pains in the signing community. I think it helps us as a signing community, whether deaf or not, to understand each other better when we look at these three research findings and we recognize patterns found across the board. It increases understanding so we have more compassion for others and more compassion for ourselves. Recently, I made a video talking about how this is a really unique time for the signing community because we're experiencing what I think are growing pains, meaning we are growing so fast that we don't know what the community will look like in the future. We don't know what to do about the growth. We don't know who belongs and who doesn't belong in the community. We're having such rapid growth. Why? Well, we have a ton of ASL students. It's the third most popular language being learned in school. The third. And it's only just behind the second most popular and will likely soon replace it, which means that there will be an army of eager students who are learning. Some are even starting in elementary school or middle school on up. It's amazing, such rapid growth. Another reason for the rapid growth is ASL interpreters. There are a lot more than ever before. Why? Well, VRS requires a large number. Interpreter training programs have popped up all over the country, so the number of interpreters has grown quickly. Another reason for such fast growth in the community is that parents are finally, when having a deaf baby, immediately deciding to learn ASL. They're learning how to sign, whereas before, that just never happened. Well, rarely. Only a few parents did. Whereas now, and from here on out, there will be many, many more parents learning ASL to communicate with their deaf babies, which means that more and more of the deaf kids born to hearing parents will learn sign from birth. Another reason for this rapid growth is because there are more people who are not deaf, such as those with Down syndrome, autism, psychogenic deafness, selective mutism, and many others who receive sign language as a blessing. It blesses my life, and they want to belong to the community too. So, yes, whereas in the past the deaf community was small, now the community has grown exponentially, and thus we're experiencing growing pains. We're unsure of what the future will look like. We're unsure of what to do, which means there are more non-deaf signers than deaf signers, much more, which makes for an interesting situation. And understandably, the deaf community feels unsteady. And that unsteadiness and those concerns cause or result in these defense mechanisms: more hypervigilance, stronger in group boundaries, more social policing. So, how do we as a signing community improve, and heal together. Now, before I share with you my thoughts about how we can help and heal and improve as a signing community, I want to first ask you to comment below what you think the community needs, how you think we can improve, what you think would help healing. Please type a comment below because I think we can discuss together, not argue, not butt heads, but just discuss, brainstorm, figure out, share inspiring, you know what I think might help ideas like that. I think together as a community, we can figure out how we can improve. For many years now, I've wondered how to help us as a community heal. I've really thought on that. And I have a few thoughts and ideas that I thought I'd share. First, I think it's important that we first recognize the pain that has accumulated over the years in the deaf community, that there are generations of pain that we need to recognize first. And recognize that the research shows that minority communities tend to have patterns. Groups who experience trauma tend to have patterns, and language deprivation causes certain patterns. And we have to see how all three emerge when it comes to the deaf community. It hits hard. Second, I think it's important to recognize that this signing community is growing exponentially right now. And really, that means we're experiencing growing pains, right? Such rapid growth means we're trying to orient ourselves and figure out what the community will look like in the future. It's an unsure time. It's a strange time. And it's okay to say, I don't know. I don't know what the future will hold. It's an odd time. Third, let's recognize that TikTok and online venues is where most of the clashes happen. Most of the drama, most of the toxicity is there online and not in the everyday interactions that we have with the community. So if your only experience with the community is on TikTok, where the drama is like a roller coaster, then you might need to disconnect, unplug, and socialize with the real world community, socialize with real people. You're still going to see those patterns, sure, but not to the extremes that are found online. Fourth, I think it's important to realize that we can still have what's called healthy boundaries. But we don't need to draw such firm lines in the sand, such staunch in-group boundaries. Codas, you don't belong. Interpreters, you shouldn't be here. ASL students, get out of here. Disabilities, we're not you. And further entrench ourselves, themselves. We don't need to do this anymore. I know there's been so much pain and so much trauma for so many years, but we can always improve ourselves. Of course, the community's history, language, and culture will still be passed forward, absolutely. But the infighting, the old habits that we have, we can let go of those and send them on their merry way. Fifth, I think we can follow Finland's example, where they call their community the signing community, not the deaf community, to recognize that codas are vital anchors in the community and that interpreters are important too. Yes, they still have the deaf community, but it's not so insular. This is our community. Go away. It's not. The larger signing community welcomes those with cochlear implants, those who are hard of hearing, and the many others who sign. And other countries tend to have a similar setup, or they identify with the greater disability community. Why? Well, they recognize that they need numbers. If they come together as tons of people with disabilities, they're able to show the government that they need access, that they need to be allowed to drive, that they need to be allowed to marry each other, to show what they need. That's the case for many countries where deaf still can't drive, still can't marry, still. So they recognize that as a unified disability community, they have more clout and can support each other. So I personally think that we can apply Finland and other countries' approaches to us a little bit. Would there still be a deaf community? Yes, of course. There would still be a deaf community, just not an only deaf community, if that makes sense. Sixth, I think it's important if we recognize that in the world today, most minority communities, minority languages rather, are shrinking in speakers and dying out. Most languages in the world are going extinct. But this community, this language, in contrast, is growing unbelievably fast. And that is unique. That, I, honestly, I can't think of any other minority language growing this fast. So that is an incredible blessing. Is sign language dying off? Is it disappearing? Not at all. Remember, in the not so distant past, people were worried that sign language would disappear because of cochlear implants, but that hasn't happened, and it looks like it won't happen as sign language is persisting. It's not going anywhere. That is extremely rare in the world today. That while minority languages are shrinking, we're growing rapidly. I'm excited to read your comments and see how we can support each other and figure out how to improve together, how to heal, how to better understand each other. I'm excited. Please comment below. Let's pass around ideas, specifically on how we can heal. Let's not be negative anymore in the comments, but just focus on healing. If you enjoyed my video today, do you mind subscribing, liking, and sharing it with others? If you don't mind doing that, I think it will help this video's positive message spread further, and I hope that will increase understanding for each other. So my video is done, yes, but you can watch more with this video here about sign language standardization or this video here, two videos that I recently published. Thank you for watching.